It is 8:11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the 4th day of August 2026, and this is episode 1365? Yeah, 1365 of Bitcoin, and boy howdy. People have been digging all over the ColdCard stuff. This is not going to be as somber of a show as yesterday. Simply because it's over. Well, I mean, the attacks are still ongoing. If you have any kind of money on any kind of ColdCard, and at this point, just assume that everything is jacked with ColdCard. And as far as I can still tell, this is only ColdCard. If you got money on ColdCard, I don't care what firmware edition. I don't care what if it's a Mark 1 or a Mark 5, consider getting your money off in somewhere else. I will continue with that warning forever, as well as this one. The phishing attacks are ramping up. Do not fall for an email that says, "Hey man, here's your recovery button. Press this." Don't do that, please. But we got all kinds of stuff going on today. I got Boltz in the news. Strategy is in the news. I got let's see who else is here. We are going to do some more ColdCard stuff. I want to read this from The Rage. It's Lola Leets, and she's kind of got like an overview of what happened. And then in the second part of the show, we're going to continue with the ColdCard thing and to talk about the phishing attacks because there's some news there. But then we've got an interesting situation. Remember, just a few seconds ago, I was talking about people are just crawling all over the whole ColdCard thing. And that means they are getting deep into the GitHub repository. And there's a couple of really old tweets that ColdCard made that this does not look good from the standpoint of maybe it wasn't just that Novak wasn't as paranoid as we thought. Maybe it wasn't just that turns out that maybe he was incompetent. It looks like maybe there was something else afoot, and we'll get into that. But then we're going to go down to Texas, where it looks like there's a moratorium on BTC miners, or not BTC miners, on AI data centers. We'll get into that. It looks like Greg Abbott, the governor down in Texas, has been getting enough flack that maybe he wants to do an audit, which we should all be doing audits on everything we see. Clarity Act will be the last up in the news today because it's getting down to the wire. Okay, so Boltz, BOLTZ. It's a non-custodial protocol, all right, but there'll be a further description here in a minute. But Boltz is a kind of like a Lightning Network swapping service, but they've paused their service after a wave of AI-assisted hacking attempts. Felix from Cointelegraph. Boltz, a non-custodial Bitcoin swapping service, says that it has disabled its service until further notice after a rise in AI-assisted hacking attempts over the last few months. In a post to X on Monday, Boltz said the decision came after seeing a steady increase in automated AI-assisted probing of its infrastructure this year. Quote, "Over the past months, we have dealt with several exploits. Each was contained, but the pattern is clear. Attackers now iterate faster than a team of our size can find and patch." I'm going to pause right there. If you did not listen to the last part of yesterday's show where I get into swarm auditing, you might want to go back and listen to it, because I think I'm right. I think I've made the right call. I think it's going to take teams of people that don't even work for the companies that they love to help audit code. I know. It's like, well, I don't know how to audit code. I don't even know how to code. Go back and listen to the last part of yesterday's show. Just I think I start talking about it about 20 minutes before the end of the show, and it's like that show is almost 2 hours long. It's like 113 minutes long, so you're gonna have to fast forward quite a bit to get there, but it's gonna take the village to raise this idiot. It just is. I don't know how else to say it, but it's gonna take several thousand people from now until the day that I guess we die to actually, like, if we're using the products of a company, like let's say a hardware wallet manufacturer, then we're going to have to help them do whatever it is that we can help them do. And it doesn't mean working full time. It means that if you got like 1,000 customers of hardware wallet company, I don't know, X, let's say, and there's 1,000 people that are willing to help out, dude, you don't need to have 1,000 people help out like 24 hours a day. But if 1,000 people donate 1 hour of their week, think about that. That's 1,000 hours of manpower a week. Yes, there will be noise. I get that part. There will be people that literally have so much no idea of what they are doing that it, will inject noise into the system. It's just, I don't see any other way out of this. Boltz is not the only company that has kind of paused their service. There's another, Zeus. Zeus Lightning has paused their service for the exact same reason. They are getting hit, and they are getting hit hard by AI probing and AI attacks and exploit searching and all the rest of the stuff. They don't have team sizes. This is what I was saying about this is a form of regulatory moding. Do you have enough money to buy enough AI tokens on the proper models that will help you actually guard against 100 people coming after you when you've got a team of 3? If you use Boltz as a service and you love them, you might consider donating, some time if you have anything that you can offer. I mean, we've gone from the value for value model into oh my God, we're all going to die if we don't pitch in. It's like the like if you're in a ship and it's taking on water, and you literally have to have a bucket brigade. And maybe that's where we're at. The value for value bucket brigade. I can't even talk. But you get what I'm going for here, right? I mean, and I hate using the analogy that the ship is sinking. I don't think that that's what it is. I just think that we find ourselves in a very heavy storm. Because ships can take on water during a very heavy storm, and the ship itself is completely watertight. But when you've got 25-foot waves crashing over the bow of your ship, you're going to take on water. It's going to happen. You're going to need the whole fucking crew out there with a bucket, just passing bucket after bucket after bucket to the dude at the edge of the boat who's throwing it back over, literally back over the edge of the boat. That's what a bucket brigade is. It's also, helps when you're putting buildings out that are on fire in the 17th century, because there was no such thing as a fire engine. But let's continue. Quote, after reviewing the results of our own recent security scans, we cannot responsibly re-enable Boltz swaps, especially as we are being actively targeted by what appear to be multiple resourceful groups while we race to deploy fixes, end quote. Boltz operational pause highlights the difficulty that smaller development teams are facing as attacks discover vulnerabilities and adapt exploits faster than they can respond. Quote, in the past few days alone, we saw a drastic acceleration of attacks, and we do not believe this asymmetry will reverse, end quote, said Boltz. In July, Solana Foundation's new Chief Information Security Officer, Michael Coates, told Cointelegraph there is a need to switch to automated defenses in the age of AI. Quote, We're at a tipping point as an industry where humans just cannot scale to meet these threats, said Coates. Quote, the only path forward we have is to have autonomous defense that operates at the speed of machines. End quote. Pay per queue, a pay per prompt AI service that takes payment in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, said it has also been dealing with a surge in exploits, possibly AI powered. Quote, we've been fighting off exploits every other week for several months, most of which we believe are AI powered. It's a very dangerous time out there, end quote. Boltz lets users perform non-custodial, trustless atomic swaps, moving Bitcoin and Bitcoin-denominated assets between the main net and different layers of Bitcoin, such as the Lightning Network and the Liquid Network. DeFi Llama showed total value locked on Boltz at the time of writing was only $180,000. Boltz said that no user funds have ever been at risk, as all Boltz swaps use advanced cryptography and are non-custodial, which means users retain full control of their assets throughout the swap process. Boltz said its API will remain available to process refunds, and its support team will stay reachable. Quote, what we are seeing is a major paradigm shift for Bitcoin services operating on an open source stack, and it needs careful analysis. Do not expect swap services to resume shortly, end quote. They're not going to turn it back on. You know, when Boltz first came out, people were like, oh man, this is freaking awesome. Boltz very well may be done. Zeus LN may very well be done. You know, what are the implications for eCash? What are the implications for Fedemint? You know, what are the implications for all the shitcoins out there? The fact that I'm not seeing that, other than DeFi, which I'm pretty sure are all AI hacks, there's not a whole lot of hacks that I'm seeing on wallets like Cardano shit, right? I'm not seeing attacks against these particular chains or the things that revolve around the chains, like, wallet addresses and other types of security. I'm not seeing attacks on MetaMask, and I don't think that that's because look how much stronger their stuff is against, compared to Bitcoin. I don't think that's it. I think there's no value there. I think there's no value in doing anything other than trying to attack things related to Bitcoin, because that's where the real value is. This has nothing to do with it's easier to hack, things that are rotating around Bitcoin, because you can't hack the chain. But you can screw with wallets like we've seen, and we'll get into the fact that this may have been something other than we thought on the second part of the show. But I'm right. I know I'm right. It's going to take a lot of us to somehow or another, I don't know how to donate like AI, like OpenAI tokens. Not that would, because OpenAI is kind of like not really used for coding. It's more of a, it's more for writing and other things. It can code. I guess it could secure your, personal website, but you're going to need something like Mythos or Claude Code or, Kimi 3 or something like that to be really credible. How do you donate those tokens? Is there a credible way to pool these tokens if you want to be able to give to somebody like Boltz so that they can maintain automated AI defenses from here until the end of time at this point? I don't know how to do that. If somebody knows something, please let me know so that I can announce it here on the show. But until then, we got to move on to your favorite guy, Michael Saylor. Strategy sells Bitcoin again after 5 weeks without buying. Matthew DeSalvo from Bitcoin Magazine. And before I even begin, let's pause. You couldn't pick a better time, Saylor? It's not like you were living under a rock. You knew what was going on with the ColdCard hack. But yet, now was the best time for you to sell, right? It was now. It wasn't next week. You couldn't wait a couple of days. You couldn't wait, I don't know, maybe longer than a week. I find it suspect. At this point, Michael Saylor can go fuck himself. And we can, I guess we can apologize, be apologists for him and say, well, he's just doing his business. He's just, it's not him that's selling. It's his company strategy. They're the ones that are selling, and maybe they're retired, they're buying back their stretch to, pump the STRC, perpetual, because it's never gotten back to its $100 peg. It's at like 92 or something like that, or at least it was after, and they had to buy a shit ton of it to get it back up to 92, and it's still not hitting its peg. It's time for Michael Saylor to retire that whole fucking thing. It was a dumb idea to begin with. I've always said, if somebody says, hey, I got a yield product on Bitcoin, you need to ask where the yield comes from, because right now it's coming from selling Bitcoin. Bitcoin Treasury Strategy on Monday announced that it had yet again sold a slice of its Bitcoin holdings. It offloaded 1,638 Bitcoin for $104.7 million. I suppose it could have been worse. In a filing with the SEC, the company said the sale took place between July 27th and August the 2nd at an average price of $63,957 per coin. Proceeds were split to cover two obligations. $52.4 million went toward dividend payments on Strategy's preferred stock, and $52.3 million funded buybacks of its Stretch preferred shares. It marked the latest string of weeks where Strategy has chosen to trim Bitcoin rather than add to it, continuing a pattern that began earlier this summer as the company leaned more heavily on stock sales and cash management to fund its obligations. Because it's apparently against the rules and Strategy for anybody to develop a product or a service that is useful enough to be sold to the public, and that product or service be so useful that a lot of people want to buy that product. They used to have a product. I have not seen Strategy advertise anything but shit like Stretch, now offering 12%, by the way. It's all bullshit. They're not advertising a product that people can actually use. And you could say, well, I use Stretch for yield. Okay, dude, you got fucking software engineers sitting behind desks. What are they engineering? Have you come up with a better manifold for a car? Have you done anything in the space industry? Are you still working on software for business intelligence that actually works in a way that people say, I want that. I am willing to pay $10,000 a year for a subscription for that. Yet we don't know, like at this point, you don't know what Strategy makes outside of AI-generated financial instrumentation. You and me, and I guarantee you nobody else actually knows anything that is produced by Strategy. Nothing. They make nothing at this point, or at least so it seems. I thought they had that they bolted AI onto their original, business intelligence package, but I don't think so. At this point, it looks to me like Strategy literally builds nothing. And I wonder what their people do all day at the Strategy headquarters. What exactly is it you do here, Bob? Well, I don't know. Nothing, I guess. It's fucking ridiculous. But people that do work and do build products are people like Galaxy Mind. The Circle P is open for business. It's where I bring plebs with goods and services, actual goods and services, for sale in Bitcoin to other plebs just like you who want to buy said goods and services, but you will be buying it in Bitcoin you'll be buying it in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling it for Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. And galaxymind.space is a website that basically, well, let me read to you this. Galaxymind.space is a free set of Bitcoin tools. No accounts, no KYC, no tracking. The core of it is a community submitted directory of over 100 merchants in around 19 countries who take Bitcoin for physical goods. So the focus is on spending sats, not just stacking sats. It also has a buying gauge that reads 10 market signals to answer whether or not now is a decent time to buy, with a 7-day forecast. A float tracker that estimates how much Bitcoin is realistically still available to buy. A scoreboard comparing the Bitcoin treasury companies like Strategy, Metaplanet 21, and Strive on the same MNAV basis, and an allocation tool for Bitcoin adjacent securities. The data is time-stamped and the methodology is public, so you can check the math for yourself. It's free to use and free to embed on your own site. But the biggest part of this is the amount of merchants. Now it's up to 128 merchants in 20 countries that you can go to galaxymind.space and find. And you can buy their stuff. There's all, let's see, where hold on for a second. Let me see what the hell's going on here. Like some funny business. There we go. BTC Aloha. BTC Aloha makes Bitcoin beachwear, art, and, Aloha shirts, dresses, and towels, and bags in linen, organic cotton, and silk. Handmade to order in England, even though she's not in Hawaii. She's in lovely old England where she's making this stuff. But she's selling her apparel in Bitcoin, and you're buying it in Bitcoin, and you can find her at galaxymind.space. That's galaxymind.space. It's today's vendor, the vendor of vendors in the Circle P. Okay, Lola Leets from The Rage. Well, actually, The Rage is Lola Leets' rag. She doesn't work for The Rage. She owns it. And she has sort of made let's just call it a rundown of everything you need to know about the ColdCard hack. Right? So I tried to do a decent job yesterday, but let's see what Lola has to say this morning. First and foremost, if you are an affected user, do not dispose of your ColdCard device. The UID that generated the seed might be used to help identify you as a rightful owner if any funds are recovered. If you use ColdCards as the majority of devices in your multi-signature setup, only move funds via private mempool services such as Slipstream to avoid your transactions from being sniped. For more information, jump to You're Affected, Now What, and Chances of Recovery sections in this article. And the article begins. On July the 30th, a Reddit user posted in panic to the message board that one of their wallets, left untouched since 2021, had been drained for roughly 0.8 BTC. Quote, I haven't done anything since creation except sending into the wallet, the user wrote. Quote, I'm hearing a potential issue with some ColdCard wallets being drained. Kevin Loeck of the Bitcoin security firm Wizard Sardine posted on X, quote, I will not FUD, but would like to get at least reports of trusted people, end quote. Throughout the day, more and more reports of affected users started to roll in. Quote, there's no need to panic. Someone loaded a bad seed into a ColdCard and or leaked their seed. Rodolfo Novak, founder of ColdCard, manufacturer CoinKite, posted on X. The post has since been deleted. Quote, that post is wrong, Novak, better known as NVK, explained. Since Thursday, over 1,000 Bitcoin worth more than $100 million have been drained from ColdCard devices. Researchers at Block, part of Jack Dorsey's Square, were quick to identify the issue. While implementing a new random number generator in 2021, ColdCard engineers disabled the very feature that was meant to retain randomness from the device's hardware, causing random number generation to fall back to the software library, resulting in not creating enough entropy to be secure. Anyone with some compute is now able to recreate a ColdCard wallet seed. In total, 4 waves of suspected drainages have been identified over the past 4 days. You're affected. So what now? Well, if you're a ColdCard user and you are fortunate enough to not yet have been targeted for the drain, move your funds immediately to another device with high transaction fees to be included in the next possible block. When moving your funds to a new wallet, make sure that you are using legitimate software. An app being featured in an official app store, such as Apple or Android, gives absolutely no guarantee of the software's legitimacy. To be sure, navigate to the software's official X profile and only download software from links or sources on the project's website. Make sure to check follower counts and match the website to other officially available sources, such as a project's GitHub page. If you're using ColdCards as part of your multi-signature setup, and ColdCards compose a signing majority of the multi-sig wallet, only move funds by utilizing a private mempool service such as Marathon Mining Slipstream, who are waiving all fees on their service for the foreseeable future. This keeps, God, hold on, that actually surprises me because I don't like Mara or Marathon. And yet they're waiving all their fees on their service for the foreseeable future so that they can help this fucking catastrophe that Novak started. And it gets worse, by the way. Not in this well, maybe in this article, but later in the show, you'll see. Anyway, it's the whole Slipstream thing keeps attackers from learning your complete multi-signature setup, which enables them to double spend your transactions in the mempool before confirmation, diverting them to their own addresses. If you do not have access to your ColdCard device, ask trusted persons to locate your device and move your funds for you. Alternatively, ask the person to send a picture of your seed via Signal Messenger so that you can move the funds yourself. Quote, don't have a spare key to your house? Have them smash open a window or kick down a door, writes Bitcoin influencer American Hodl on X. Quote, you are in a race against motivated and malicious people wanting to steal your wealth. Throw the regular rules out the window and do what you must in order to save your coins. Don't wait, end quote. Since the original attack, reports have started to come in of ColdCard wallets being drained that have been protected by so-called passphrases, a mechanism which adds an extra layer of security to your original Bitcoin seed. All ColdCards appear vulnerable depending on how much compute attackers are throwing at the problem. Should your wallet already have been drained, do not panic. Immediately check whether the outgoing transactions have already been mined by filling the transaction ID into a public mempool explorer like mempool.space. If the transaction has not yet been mined, move fast to replace the malicious transactions via replace by fee, otherwise known as RBF, to retransfer the funds into your custody. If the fraudulent transactions have already been mined, do not dispose of your ColdCard device that was used to generate the affected seed. The featured UID might be able to be used to determine you as the BTC's rightful owner. If any of your coins have been purchased via processes subjected to know your customer, or you have any other documentation over rightful ownership of coins, such as invoices featuring the payout addresses that can be corroborated by third parties, your Bitcoin could be returned to you in case that Bitcoin is recovered. File a report with your local law enforcement cybercrime unit, as well as the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center to document your loss and be eligible to recover funds. What are the chances of recovering funds? Well, the chances of recovering at least some of the stolen proceeds appear slim, but not zero. Over the past few days, reports have surfaced of white hat hackers taking control of funds with the intention of returning them to their rightful owners. While it is unclear whether all waves of attacks have been initiated by the same person, at least some of the attackers do not appear to be very sophisticated. Alex Thorne of Galaxy Research, who has been tracing the money for the past 5 days, following a suspicious pattern, such as exorbitantly high fixed-amount transaction fees, originally identified by Block researchers, he has stated to have identified at least one deposit to a cryptocurrency casino site, which he states to have the depositor's identity on file. Researchers at Block also have stated to have found that one of the attackers may have used a paid account at a well-known blockchain services provider, offering yet another potential avenue to identify the attackers. How did we even get here? Over the years, ColdCard has been one of the few true love brands within the Bitcoin-only industry. The devices, designed to look like calculators, could function fully air-gapped. Pictures of cold cards along raw meat and guns frequently popped up on the timeline. The devices even featured a designated area to shoot if the wallets were to be discarded. If you held anything of your conviction to the Bitcoin Purity team, ColdCard was the device to secure your wealth and make you look extremely cool while doing so. In hindsight, many now acknowledge that the red flags had always been there. ColdCard's engineering team is alleged to have stuck to a rather unconventional path of committing changes to the software, including a lack of commit descriptions, as well as the direct commitment to ColdCard's main repository without standard practice review. Quote, committing direct to main without any peer review is acceptable only for a pet project, writes security researcher Taylor Moynihan on X. Quote, not something protecting 9 figures of other people's fucking money, end quote. Novak's CoinKite additionally held what appeared to be a rather subjective bounty program for vulnerability disclosures, which is another standard practice in software development. Anyway, the firm explicitly reserved the right to patch vulnerabilities without offering a bounty payout. So yeah, it's rather unconventional bounty program where somebody finds a thing and says, hey, I found the thing, and they patch it and they don't actually pay you a bounty. It was basically just harvesting goodwill at that point. Just getting pissed. Sorry. Hold on. Take a breath. Complicating incentives to review ColdCard code further was Novak's rather adversarial approach to all competitors. After the hardware wallet developer Foundation Devices forked ColdCard's code and used for their own implementation, Novak decided to remove the project's free and open source license, placing the software instead under a viewable source license. You could see the source code, you just couldn't actually do anything with it because it was licensed, and if that license wasn't you. Anyway, but when no one is allowed to use your code, there's not very many people who have any incentive whatsoever to review it either. The commit message to change ColdCard's random number generator, changing 1,534 lines of code, then features 5 characters and is simply the word runs, notes Lightning developer Dusty Damon in a write-up of the incident. But the code could not have run had the software been correctly implemented. Let's read that again. The code could not have run had the software been correctly implemented, Damon points out. Quote, there is now no way for this code to compile. I assume in a bout of frustration, he set the random number generator to 0, which would have resolved a compiler error. Setting RNG to 0 completely removed the code that used the hardware random number generator. The compiler error was begging the programmer to reconsider his logic, Damon concluded. Quote, instead of that happening, the compiler error was simply silenced. The compiler was giving the developer one last chance to reconsider what he was about to do, but the alarm was ignored and then it was silenced. End quote. Developers are now questioning whether ColdCard has ever initiated a third-party security audit on its software. The RNG is arguably the most important line of code in the firmware, writes pseudonymous Cashew developer Callie on X. Quote, it'd be interesting to know whether CoinKite did have external security audits and what those audits said. You can find CoinKite's disclosures here. And of course, here is actually an underlined link. Okay, there's more to this story. But there's two things here that I want to talk about before we run numbers. One is the code was not able to run because it wouldn't have been able to compile. So that's one thing. And there's two things that I want to say about it. The first thing that strikes me is, remember coming out of 2017 and there was the SegWit fork. Okay, now, well, we ended up getting SegWit on actual Bitcoin, on the actual Bitcoin blockchain. But there was another, the people that wanted to increase the block size during the block size wars, the user activated soft fork basically, killed that whole thing. We were going to have Bitcoin the way Bitcoin was, but we were going to get SegWit, and that was it. And that's what we got, blah, blah, blah. And you can complain about whatever that caused with ordinals and inscriptions later on. But that's what we were left with now. That's actual real Bitcoin. But they implemented a hard fork. They were going, we're going to have 4 megabyte blocks anyway. We're going to do all this shit anyway. And that fork never mined a block because there was an off by one error in the code and it completely failed on implementation. That is exactly what I was thinking when I read this line. But the code could not have run the software, or had the software been correctly implemented. It wouldn't have run. And here's the second part of what I want to say. And we're going to get into this. Okay, there was a change. We talked yesterday. I talked about it fell back to this other, this other thing. It was, fell back to the software. What I didn't know at the time was this. A developer at CoinKite could not get the code to compile unless he set the random number generator. The one thing the hardware wallet is supposed to be able to do is actually give you a true random number. He set it to 0. Essentially, he turned it off. And he turned it off so that he could get the goddamn code to compile. And instead of fixing it later, because maybe he did that or she did that, maybe they did that simply to get it to compile so they could fix something else. I don't, or look at something else or whatever. But it's very clear now that people are looking. I mean, there's eyes all over this code. This code is basically probably more audited now than any other code in history, except for the actual Bitcoin code itself. We're finding out that they never fixed that. In the 2021 firmware upgrade, random number generator, the code for that was set to off, just so the software would compile. Think about that, because we're going to come back to that particular commit in the GitHub stack. So if you don't know what GitHub is, lots of people use it to, so other people can use their code. It's a way for many people to work on the same code. It is standard operating procedure in software development. GitHub is very well known. And you can see who committed what. And we're now pretty sure that we know exactly who turned this off and exactly who set this version of the turned off random number generator to be committed, or in other words, enveloped into the actual code base that was going to be loaded on tens of thousands of ColdCard devices that you bought with your money so that you could think that you were actually protecting your money. And this is going to come back in the second part of the show. But first, we got to run numbers. CNBC futures and commodities, and I guess we're all okay with Iran again, because all energy is in the red. Brent North Sea is down 5.6% to under $80 a barrel, 78.99. West Texas Intermediate getting hit just as hard, almost 6% to the downside, 75.49. Natural gas is not being a hedge today, 4.1% to the downside, $2.66 per thousand, and gasoline is down 4.4 to $2.83 a gallon, and Merbon crude down 5% to $76.94. Metals, as you might imagine, are very much in the green today. Palladium is up over 7%. Gold is up, but it's only up at 1.25% to $41.40 and 6 dimes. Platinum is up 7.7%. Silver is up 3.5%, just a hair under $60 per ounce. Copper is up 1.7%. Ag is mostly in the red, but there's a few green ones here. And the biggest winner today is coffee, up almost a full point. Biggest loser is wheat, down 2.11%. Live cattle is down 0.1%. Lean hogs down 0.2%. Feeder cattle up a third. And the indices are all in the green because, hey, we're all going to be fine with Iran for the 15th try. And it's going to work this time. This time it's different. S&P is up 1 1/3. NASDAQ is up 2.7%. Dow is up 1.5%. And the S&P Mini is up 1.4%. $64,100 is what we're getting on a Bitcoin today. It's a $1.29 trillion market cap. And we can get 15.7 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20,065,510.51 Bitcoin in circulation. And the average fees per block are normal, 0.02 Bitcoin taken in fees on a per block basis. Again, about 45 blocks carrying 89,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 2 sats per VByte. Low priorities will get you in at 0.6. 949 exahashes per second. I am surprised at just how much hash rate is still on after all of this. The bear market basically getting kicked in the nuts with the ColdCard thing. Boltz shutting down, Zeus Lightning shutting down. I mean, maybe not permanently, but they ain't coming back in the foreseeable future. You got Strategy selling Bitcoin, and yet Bitcoin's like 64K, man. 64K. And the hash rate at 949 is actually pretty damn high. And so that's all the protection that I need. But what I do need are donations. I need donations to the show. Because now more than ever, I really don't want to go get any kind of sponsors. Because I actually tried to go get CoinKite as a sponsor for this show. Because at the time, I still trusted them. Right? And I was completely ghosted. It looked like they were actually going to do it. And then they found out that nobody likes me on X. And then they said, fuck you. So I never got sponsorship out of them. And I still, to this day, do not have a sponsorship. And a lot of that's my fault because I just, I don't really reach out that much. But then again, something like the ColdCard incident comes along and it reminds me that maybe I dodged a bullet. I don't know. But one thing that I do know is I got bills to pay. And I love doing this show. And I think it's an important show. I think it so that you can just listen on the train going to work or wherever it is that you are. And you don't have to wade through the 7 freaking Bitcoin news websites and filter out all the freaking garbage so that I can tell you what the hell's going on in Bitcoin today. And if you think that's valuable and you want to pay fiat to help me out here, you can go to bitcoinandshow.com. That's bitcoinandshow.com. I got a couple of different paid tiers. You will get the exact same thing that even the free guys get, right? Because I want to make everything open. I don't want to hide shit. Oh, you can only see it if you pay me $50 a year. You can pay me $50 a year, but it's for value for value. If you think I'm bringing you value, then please show me some value back. Go to bitcoinandshow.com. bitcoinandshow.com. That's bitcoinandshow.com. Sign up for one of the 2 paid tiers. And if you just don't want to do that, you can have the free one too. I will give you, out like 2 or 3 times a week, I convert a full show into a little write-up. I've got a link to the show. I try to put some art in, that is representative of what's going on in that day's news. And it for you, but it's also so that you can say, I listened to the show. I got $50. It's in frickin' fiat, but here you go. You can go to Bitcoin and Show and you can show your love there. And if you don't want to do it that way, you want to pay with Bitcoin. That's why I do value for value in podcasting. And only Podcasting 2.0 allows you to send me a note like INPC, who gave me a Petra boost on Not Cold Enough, yesterday's episode of Bitcoin And as soon as his freaking thing comes up, I will let you know what he said. And I may not be able to do that. I may have to go back and get the regular one. Hold on. Okay, here we go. INPC with a Petra boost. That is a row of 7. 7,777 sats says, appreciate you, Dave. At least you never profited from promoting ColdCard. Maybe getting banned from Twitter was a good thing. Value for value is super hard, I know. My own little show generates pennies, but if we take the sponsorship cash, the risk of compromise is so much greater, unless you have the time and inclination to fully scrutinize the sponsor, and what sponsors want that? I hope Zaps improve over time. Big up. Thank you, INPC. I appreciate that. Even after I've gotten your name wrong so many times, I kept calling him LNPC, but it's not. It's INPC. I appreciate that, sir. Terron, who I've never seen before, gives me 5,005 sats, so it's a palindrome boost. Dave, give yourself some credit, please. We do listen and enjoy this podcast. We do think for ourselves. And if you are not, then that is you. Don't trust, verify. We all just got reality checked. You damn Skippy, we did. Kaz Peelan with 512 says, dude, I cannot blame you. I lost 27 UTXOs. I don't blame you. Thanks for your work. I appreciate that, sir. Jason High with 250 says, the ColdCard thing is a bit distressing for non-techie people like me. I didn't have a ColdCard. I have a different hardware wallet, but I was trusting that coder types were all checking the code on these things. Was ColdCard open source? No, it wasn't. It was known, Jason, it was known as what's called source viewable. You could see and read the source code, but you could not use the source code. And no outside person was able to make or suggest or basically make a pull request as far as I know. They certainly couldn't make commits, and we're going to get to that here in the commitment phase of a GitHub repository here in a minute. And I don't know, I'm going to be honest, I've never actually seen a GitHub repository that has source viewable only. I don't know what exactly that means. from what I understand from other people, it means yes, you can read the code. But I don't know if that means that you can I guess it means that you can't clone the repository, which means that you have a complete copy of everything in that repository on your own machine, or recommit it back to your own GitHub account so that you can start pulling it apart, have your own pull requests, have your own commits, start making your own thing. I'm not exactly sure what source viewable actually is and the full parameter set of what source viewable is. But one thing I can tell you, no one was allowed to use this code after March of 2021. Before that, it was fully open source. And remember what I read to you, Foundation devices basically did what people on GitHub do with free and open source software. They cloned the GitHub repository from ColdCard and they built their own device. And Novak hit the ceiling and shit the bed at the same time, all about that, and then closed up the source code and put all of the source code under a completely different kind of use license so that you weren't able to actually use the code. We'll get into that a little bit heavier here in a second. Nick Dose with 252 says cheers. And Noster Gang with 101 sat says this whole thing is fucked. If anyone needs someone to talk to, hit me up. I'm not technical, but willing to help in any way I can. I do work in data validation. Perhaps that could be useful in some capacity. Again, that is Noster Gang on Noster. If you're not on Noster, you have to ask yourself the question, why? Because there are really good people, and Noster Gang is one of the really good people. Nick Dose is great. Jason High's great. Kaz Peeland is great. INPC is great. Terran seems like a good guy. I mean, I've never actually, I don't think I've ever actually interacted with Terran, but they're all on Noster. And Noster Gang, she's helping, or she's offering to help you, maybe just as even an emotional salve. If you just need someone to talk to, Noster Gang is offering herself up as a sympathetic ear. So you might want to consider that if you got hosed. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use, where we will beat a dead horse. Hardware wallet firms warn of phishing surges as ColdCard losses near $130 million. Stephen Graves on the scene for Decrypt.co. Hardware wallet manufacturers Trezor and Foundation have warned of a surge in phishing attempts trading on the ColdCard firmware exploit, with scammers chasing users' recovery phrases and pushing malicious downloads. Trezor said it was already seeing an increase in phishing attempts following the disclosure telling users to enter a wallet backup only on the device itself and reiterating that its own hardware was unaffected. Foundation said it had been made aware of emails impersonating that firm and pushed recipients towards fake websites and malicious downloads, adding that Foundation itself will never ask for a recovery phrase nor tell users to install software to secure a wallet. Security firm Proofpoint documented a phishing campaign targeting ColdCard users on Monday. Emails sent from a spoofed ColdCard address invite recipients to complete a, quote, coordinated hardware audit, a theme lifted from the security incident itself and linked to a cloned ColdCard site carrying a, quote, start hardware audit button. And you probably can tell what the hell that button does. Clicking the button, in fact, pulls a batch file hosted on GitHub, which installs Screen Connect, a legitimate remote access tool. Proofpoint said that gives attackers a route to data and financial theft, or to follow on malware such as ransomware. The fake site also runs a customer service chat window. Proofpoint said a real person, not a bot, answers in that window, and walks victims through the installation, assessing the breach as an effective social engineering lure because it preys on the fear and concern holders now have about their crypto security. The ColdCard exploit stems from the March 2021 firmware build that drew wallet seeds from a software fallback instead of the device's hardware random number generator, leaving private keys guessable. Galaxy Research has confirmed 3 waves of thefts since July 30th and puts high confidence in losses at 1,596 Bitcoin. That's well above $100 million, including a 4th wave it suspects but is not confirmed. That total could reach $130 million. The firm's head of research, Alex Thorne, said Tuesday that at least 15 separate attackers are now exploiting the flaw, noting that every wave but the first was identified through victim reports. ColdCard manufacturer CoinKite has issued patched firmware and told affected users to move funds to newly generated seeds, pausing to say, just never use CoinKite products again. Never use CoinKite products again. Never use CoinKite products again. I won't tell you where to go because I was telling people to get ColdCards. Especially right now today, I cannot offer you another vendor, but do not fucking use CoinKite. Rodolfo Novak and his friend Mr. Gray can go fuck themselves. And if you don't know who Mr. Gray is, you will here in a minute. But before we do that, let's finish this. Just so you know, phishing campaigns have used an array of methods to target hardware wallet owners. In February, Trezor and Ledger users were hit by a physical mail campaign impersonating the firms, complete with holograms and forged executive signatures built around the same manufactured deadline. A counterfeit Ledger app drained millions of dollars from holders in April, and a March campaign used fake GitHub issues to lure developers onto a spoofed site. Galaxy Research said the ColdCard exploit is ongoing and urged holders to move funds to a fresh seed or to a custodian, giving the phishing lure a long potential shelf life. That last sentence, I want to reiterate why it's important. This phishing campaign is going to go on fucking forever. And here's why. Because before the days of AI, I would actually have to, I don't know, like one day wake up and go, I haven't phished somebody for that exploit that happened 2 years ago in a long time. Maybe I should put that back out. No, now I can just harness like 3 or 4 different artificial intelligence agents utilizing 12 different LLMs and just have it automate that for me. Phishing campaigns on not just this, but essentially everything are now fully automated. Now, I know there's been automated phishing campaigns before, but now all of them are going to be automated. Because if you're competing in the I need to steal somebody's money arena, you're not going to be able to survive unless you can afford the tokens to be able to do it. Remember what I was saying yesterday. Small companies will not have the money available to them to be able to daily audit their code or basically look for use every new model under the sun. Every day that a new model comes out, you'll have to use that to reevaluate your code to see if that model finds something different. And unless you have the money for the tokens, you don't survive. And that's legitimate. That is legit businesses. They may be assholes for doing it, but it's still legitimate business. We're now in the realm of talking about phishing, which is clearly illegitimate. And they are going to have the same problems. If you want to compete in the field of stealing people's money, you're going to have to use AI. Do you have enough tokens to be able to spend? And is your spend less than what you receive from the phishing attempts that are now 100% fully automated? I know I'm right. Swarm audits are the only thing that is going to be able to get not only save people in different situations, but to allow smaller teams. Because we used to say, well, now one guy can build the next billion-dollar company. Are we sure? Is that already over as of K3 from Kimmy or from Moonshot or whatever, Kimmy K3 from Moonshot AI over in China? Ever since that shit dropped, it's like that's that Rubicon moment, kind of. At least that's what it looks like. Is it now possible for one guy with, a harness full of AI agents to be able to actually build the next $100 billion trillion company? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we're right back to where we were before all this bullshit started. Because you don't have enough token. All right. What is a retirement attack? Well, I got a screenshot here of BLK014 asking that very question directly as a reply to ColdCard. So ColdCard wrote something about retirement, or rather, ColdCard themselves actually wrote a tweet back in 2021. Back in 2021, when the whole RNG being set to 0 was actually done. With that commit was made in March of 2021. Where they set RNG to 0 so that the fucking code would compile. In October of 2021, ColdCard made a joke about a retirement attack. BLK014 writes back and says, what is a retirement attack? And ColdCard, out of the kindness of their heart, took time out of their fucking day to write this back. It's when the project makers could have a, quote, bug in the entropy generation for later retrieval. You want to sit with that for a moment, or shall I tell you what Michelle Weekly did right after that comment? Because she was, she's on X, and she replied directly to that statement that ColdCard made. It's odd. I think she found it odd that he's like, well, this particular retirement account or retirement attack, this is in the entropy generation. That's the random number generator. Remember, RNG was set to 0 so the code could compile, and it was shipped in that state to thousands of people. He's talking about that's how you go to retirement. Or it could also be said that's how you attack other people's retirement, because that's what both happened at the exact same time. This attack allows somebody to retire on the back of the retirement of other people. So Michelle Weekly, she writes back to ColdCard joking around and says, Grok, what are the mathematical odds that ColdCard would make this joke and then the exact scenario they're joking about turn out to be true a few years later? I know, it's Grok. Take it with a grain of salt. But even Michelle Weekly is like, dude, what are the chances? Grok happens to think the odds of pure coincidence is effectively 0. Retirement attack. A bug in the entropy generation for later retrieval. What does later retrieval mean? It means I know because nobody else could view my code. Now, this is pure conjecture, okay? I know because nobody can actually see this deep into the code commits that we actually set RNG to 0 so this fucker would compile. Or maybe we just set it to 0 and we ship it that way. And we keep it shipped that way all the way up until now. That's the retirement attack. Because at that point, maybe it is the case, and I'm not, again, conjecture. Maybe it was Rodolfo Novak and a gentleman named Peter Gray, and maybe a couple of other people at CoinKite decided that they wanted to retire, and they pulled out the retirement attack, which is RNG set to 0. Now, again, 100% pure conjecture. I have no evidence of, this kind of, malfeasance. Actually, it's not even malfeasance. It's just straight up theft. I have no proof, and I'm not going to conjecture any longer because I want to get to this one. Dylan LeClaire has a screenshot, and essentially the screenshot is of, hold on, the screen. I'm sorry. Something flickered and it caught my attention. And for some reason or another, my browser is not, well, that's weird. My browser is not allowing me to zoom into this. Anyway, so Dylan LeClaire posted a screenshot. And I'll tell you what I can't really describe what the screenshot is. It's basically looking at PGP keys in the GitHub repository of CoinKite. And those PGP keys would be basically generated by people that are making pull requests, but moreover, people that are actually changing the CoinKite code and committing that code to what goes out into production. To make sure that the person that did it actually has that person is who that person says they are. A lot of people will use, here's my PGP key, and that's what you use to sign the commit that actually gets the changes you made into the production code. Well, we thought it was this one guy that did this RNG set to 0, but it turns out that it's probably another guy. Right? Here's what I mean. The PGP key that was actually used to sign the commit and a whole bunch of other stuff around the RNG equaling 0 thing where the entropy was basically screwed, and that's what caused this entire mess in the first place. That PGP key actually belongs to a gentleman named Peter Gray. And who, may you ask, is Peter Gray? He's the chief technical officer or chief technology officer of CoinKite and the co-founder of CoinKite. We all see Rodolfo Novak as the face of the ColdCard. Hardly anybody knows who Peter Gray is. Yet it turns out that Peter Gray looks like the dude that made this commit. And it also looks like he's the guy that set RNG to 0 to get the code to compile. It's if this ends up being true, it's reprehensible. So I ran across a tweet from a guy named James OB, actually it's James O'Byrne, who's been looking at this particular situation. And he's got an analysis on GitHub at his own GitHub repository about the very situation that came up from Dylan LeClaire. That screenshot that Dylan LeClaire sparked a lot of stuff. And I don't know if it was James O'Byrne who came up with it first, but it doesn't matter. The title is Switch equals doc hex, proven by GPG commit signatures. Here's the question. This is important. Is the GitHub alias switch, which is spelled with a K and not an H at the end, but with a K, but I'm going to call it switch because I don't know how to pronounce that other word. Is the GitHub alias switch actually doc hex, which is Peter Gray's alias on GitHub, on the basis of GPG signatures over Git commits? So who's Switch? Well, Switch was actually the guy that we thought was making the GitHub commit. But Switch had to use a PGP to actually sign that commit to get the code into production. And everybody can see that PGP key on these commits. So we know, or at least up until yesterday, we thought it was this guy named Switch that did it. But upon further examination, the PGP key isn't Switch's key. It's matched to Peter Gray, the CTO of CoinKite. So the answer to the question reads like this. And again, this is on James O'Byrne's GitHub. He asked the question, is the GitHub alias Switch actually Doc Hex, which is Peter Gray's alias, on the basis of GPG signatures over Git commits? Answer, yes. Cryptographically proven. 58 commits were authored as Switch, and they carry valid GPG signatures, but they were made with Doc Hex's personal key. That's Peter Gray, the CTO of CoinKite. The same key that signs Doc Hex's commits in the exact same repository, interleaved in time. The Switch GitHub account has no GPG key of its own. Okay, so there's a guy working or doing work for CoinKite. His name is Switch. He makes this change in the random number generator, sets it to 0 so the code can compile. That's the story so far. And then Switch signs a commit to get that exact RNG set to 0 into production code, which means it's going to be copied and put on all the devices that are made by CoinKite and mailed to customers who paid them good money to try to secure their futures the right way. Switch never had his own GPG signature. Peter Gray's signature is the signature used to make that commit, but it was made in Switch's account. But it was signed for by Peter Gray's PGP key. We know it was Peter. The guy that introduced the bug, at least getting it into production code, was Peter Gray, Chief Technology Officer of CoinKite, and he did so in March of 2021. And then you've got, in October of that same year, ColdCard making jokes about retirement attacks and how it is basically where a bug is introduced in the entropy generator for retrieval at a later date. It was a long con. I have no proof that was a long con, but I'm calling it. For the entirety of this time, since at least I don't know what changed in March of 2021. We might want to go back and look at what events were surrounding Bitcoin March of 2021, aside from COVID. Well, actually, that may have been it. Maybe it was just the fear of COVID. Anyway, that's when it was made. But since that time, they knew they were going to rug. I think this is 100% an inside job. As to whether or not Rodolfo Novak and Peter Gray are actually the ones doing it, can't prove it. I don't know. Where's Novak? And where the fuck is Peter Gray? These are the questions that we need to be asking. It is my belief at this time, until something changes, this was actually a robbery committed on people that really thought CoinKite was above board. If it's true, Novak and Peter Gray played on the hopes and dreams of thousands of people that just wanted to do the right thing for their families and for themselves. And they ate it like dog food. Nobody at this point, nobody at CoinKite needs to be able to escape, because this looks like it was pure theft from the inside. It no longer looks like it was done from somebody who accidentally discovered this particular bug by, what did I say yesterday? Looking through all of the firmware upgrades over the years and asking the question to like Kimmy 3 or whatever, saying, look at all these firmware upgrades and tell me which one introduces any kind of bug that I can use to exploit. That bug was there. It was done on purpose. The exploit was basically sitting there, and it looks like to me that Mr. Gray and Mr. Novak decided to abscond with everybody's money. That's what I believe 100% in my core at this moment of time. That could change because I don't have if I get new information, like new shit has come to light, man. If new shit comes to light, man, then maybe I'll change my mind. But for right now, I can't see past. This was a very long con, and good people paid the price. Let's move to Texas. Texas electric grid moratorium won't have a big impact on Bitcoin miners, according to Bernstein. Robert Locken from Cointelegraph. Bitcoin miners with operations in Texas are not expected to be impacted by a moratorium on the approval of data center projects connected to the state's grid operator ordered by Governor Greg Abbott, Bernstein analyst said on Tuesday. Because Abbott on Monday directed the Public Utility Commission of Texas and the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, otherwise known as ERCOT, to audit all data centers seeking to connect to the state's power grid. The duration of the audit was not specified and comes amid increasing public backlash to the pace of data center build-out across the state. Bernstein analysts told clients on Tuesday that as most of the Bitcoin miners operating in Texas are under contract for approved electric capacity, those operations are unlikely to be impacted by any of the moratorium. However, we believe, and this is a quote, this audit throttles speculative data center pipeline and makes genuine sites with development history more valuable. The research team led by Gautam Chunagi said in its note, quote, Bitcoin mining sites are favorable places with the longest gestation, self-funding infrastructure, and local community management, they said. Let's pause right there. What did he just say? Because of this moratorium and because of the wild-ass build-out expectations across the artificial intelligence industry, the previously existing Bitcoin mining sites with previously existing power contracts have become even more valuable. We might be losing some miners here in the future because it looks like it just doubled the buy price of any of these miners that were already there. Continuing, they said that local operations of Cipher Digital and Core Scientific and CleanSpark could be the miners most exposed to future public opposition to data center expansion, particularly during ERCOT's approval process to convert their pipeline assets into grid-connected power capacity. Quote, we believe with increasing political opposition to new data center projects and fresh capacity being throttled by moratoriums and state directives, the approved megawatts become even more valuable, they said, highlighting the Texas mining operations IRON, which is fully ERCOT grid approved, and the operations of Riot Platforms. CIFR shares were down more than 7% on Tuesday's pre-market trading, according to Yahoo Finance data. The miner reported second quarter results earlier on Tuesday, posting a loss of 65 cents per diluted share, widening from last year's loss of 12 cents per diluted share. So no more AI data center build-outs in Texas, at least for the time being, until I guess the audit's going to include, well, exactly how much power do you want and how are you going to get it here? And this is sort of where I think all this is going. Right now, the data center build-out is basically the data center guys, the investors behind it, and all the people that are planning it. This is low-hanging fruit. Hey, we'll just connect to the state's power grid, dude. It's going to be great. We'll just pay them money. We'll pay them money for the power. But now that power is becoming more and more scarce, and it's causing problems for residents because residential power bills are indeed going up. And I'm not saying this because my next sentence is going to be kill everything. You know, like make sure AI, no, I don't want to, whatever. What I'm getting at is that I think that this audit represents itself its own kind of crossing the Rubicon. You will not be able to functionally be an AI data center unless you produce your own power. I think that's where we're going. And I think it's going to be great for natural gas because out in West Texas, where there is a fuck ton of natural gas wells that are abandoned because nobody had the money to build the pipes to it, I'll bet you start seeing a lot of pipelines being laid for natural gas in West Texas. Because these data centers are going to, I bet you my bottom dollar that Texas is going to start saying, sure, we'd love to have you and your data center come party with us. But buddy, this is bring your own power. We're not providing an open bar. You got to generate your own power. And furthermore, in order to do that, you're going to have to agree to grid stabilization, which means that in times of stress on the power grid, your power that you are required to produce yourself, we'll buy it from you, but you're going to be required to switch over to the grid and send the power that you generate for your data center out to Texas grid, or at least a portion of it, to help out. But I think the days of power or AI and data centers just easily being able to connect to some state or regional grid, that shit is now over. They're going to have to come bearing their own gifts, and that it'll be a gift of power. Last up, Clarity Act teeters. And as it does, a mystery group hammers away at crypto in Washington ads, CoinDesk, Jesse Hamilton writing. The crypto industry's central policy drive is to get U.S. laws that elevate it to a fully regulated and government-approved corner of the financial system. While the legislation to do that is kind of struggling with its final Senate test, a mystery organization is flooding Washington, D.C. with ads linking crypto to terrorists and drug cartels. Surprised they didn't use child fucking trafficking. Across television and social media, the localized campaign warns in one example, quote, the worst people operating in the darkest places use crypto because there's no guardrails, end quote, citing connections to drug cartels, terrorists, and people preying against senior citizens. They brought out the old people but forgot to include the kids. I guess that's coming next. Quote, let's bring crypto out of the shadows now, the ad says. The recently emerging group behind the campaign is Crypto Watchdog, run by Executive Director Chapin Fay, a media strategist who has been involved in past Republican political campaigns but hadn't been previously associated with crypto. Quote, our mission is fairly simple and direct, he told CoinDesk in an interview. Quote, it's to bring sunlight and transparency to an over $12 trillion industry that has historically not been transparent, end quote. His organization started work several weeks ago as the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act has been heading toward the intense endgame of its U.S. Senate negotiations, in which many Democrats and some Republicans have wavered or stridently withheld their support as some of the bill's most contentious points are debated. Quote, as the public dialogue and debate is going on about the Clarity Act and other regulatory schemes, we want the decision makers and the American public to have all the information they can possibly have and understand the risks in each different category, Fay said. A June survey it commissioned of 1,000 voters suggested that 65% of them viewed crypto with a high level of distrust, the group reported. Similar to findings in a CoinDesk survey earlier this year in which 60% of respondents saw crypto as mostly a negative force in the economy, and Crypto Watchdog's push for transparency doesn't extend to its own backers. Similar to certain dark money efforts on the other side of the crypto ledger, such as the multi-million-dollar pro-crypto Cedar Innovation Foundation that's pitted itself against Democratic officials, it's not revealing the sources of its funding. Oh, you want us to shine a light on everything, but we can't even tell who's funding you. The hypocrisy is a big pile of shit here, man. When Fay was asked who was paying for that organization's activity, he says, I'm not going to speak for our funders. And when asked whether transparency should go both ways, he argued that crypto transparency and information about crypto watchdog supporters are apples and oranges. Yeah, there's an agenda here. Fay contends his group isn't anti-crypto, though its website highlights articles on hacks and thefts and scams, and delves into the most negative aspects of the sector. The group's cautionary message keeps circulating this week as the Senate faces its final hours in which lawmakers can either advance or stall the Clarity Act. Many of the earlier issues had been ironed out by lawmakers from both parties until the most significant gap remains a proposed ethics constraint on senior government officials. Democrats, with President Donald Trump in mind, has demanded the legislation include limits on government officials' crypto activity. The Senate has entered its final week before its summer recess, and the lawmakers are currently scheduled to finish work on Friday. That's this Friday, before leaving Washington, D.C. Crypto lobbyists see these final days as the very last chance to get at least 60 Senate supporters together to start approving the bill, even if the work has to get finished during Congress's next brief window in September. One of the Clarity Act's most vehement opposition forces is the banking lobby, which has continued its campaign to convince lawmakers that the crypto sector stablecoin will threaten U.S. banking deposits if the platforms are permitted to shower users with rewards. You know, if it doesn't go through, and it looks like it might not, again, we're going to take a hit on Bitcoin price. And then it's going to rebound because, after a few days, people forget that Clarity failed and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter because the Clarity Act is a bad bill. It's just a bad bill. It doesn't have enough developer protections. I can understand the Democrats' argument, right? Here about like, dude, the president shouldn't be getting rich off this stuff. Fuck, I agree. Biden and his son shouldn't have been getting rich off Ukraine either. But I'm not suggesting, I didn't say that last thing because they did, then President Trump can. No, I want quite the opposite. I want these motherfuckers poorer than barn mice. I want them to get no money. Actually, I take that back. I want people in the Senate and House of Representatives, the presidency, I want them to depend on their paycheck from the American people. The paycheck that they get as a senator, as a representative, as a president or a vice president. They need to depend on that for their fucking livelihood. And anybody who doesn't need to depend on that for their livelihood is somehow or another, I don't know how to say it other than banned from ever running, because I'm tired of this shit. And you'll immediately go, that's just as bad as having the poorest people tell all the rich people what to do. I don't know what to do at this point with any of this. I do not have the answers. I'm a capitalist at heart. I think you should be able to deploy capital, and that the amount of money that you make by that capital allows you to make, whether you opened a restaurant or or a software company, that the money you make out of that endeavor is more than the money that you put in to cause the endeavor to occur. That's just capitalism at its base. It's the deployment of capital in order to make a profit. Now, using government, regulatory moding to make sure that you're the only person that makes a massive profit in a particular industry, that's not capitalism. That's cronyism. There's a fucking difference. Please go back to school if you think that, oh, well, that's capitalism. No, it is not. No, it is not. No, it is not. A lemonade stand run by two little girls in the middle of summer. It's not going to make any money, but it's capitalism. Pure, unbridled capitalism. Why? Because it took them time to set all that shit up. And their mom maybe invested in it by going to the store and buying them a couple of packs of lemon Kool-Aid, whatever. This is the way shit's been done. But their hope is by doing this work that they will be able to make some kind of money and be able to have fun doing it. That's why one of the reasons why I love Lubbock, Texas. They have an entire weekend that the Chamber of Commerce, the Lubbock Economic Development Council, and a couple of other people Small Business Association, they all get together and they all sponsor lemonade stands. They basically will look, they are encouraging children to write up a business plan. It's like a letter to Santa. We all get it, but the kids bring in their business plan to the Small Business Association or the Chamber of Commerce. And it's read by an adult that has at least some experience in business or experience dealing with people that are experienced in business. And they read it. And they tell the kid, here's what you could do to make it better. Or, basically it's a chance to teach the kid how to do business. It's not going to turn them into billionaires, but fuck, it's more than I got in goddamn high school. And they do it for it's like an entire week, right? And it culminates in that weekend where they build the actual, where they build the lemonade stands and the business plans. They do all that for the week. And then it all happens on this one weekend where all these kids and all their parents and all these people, they got together to put fucking lemonade stands on corner streets and shit at parks. And remember during COVID or rather right before COVID, when it got so bad that cops were shutting down, you'd read news stories about cops shutting down lemonade stands. That was actually kind of happening in Lubbock too. And then all of a sudden somebody came up with a great idea. It's like, we're literally going to codify this as Lemonade Stand Week, or I can't remember, lemonade. I think they call it Lemonade Day, but it's like a whole few days where adults are helping kids get their shit together. That's capitalism. And it's also, honestly, you're going to hate me. It's also a little bit of socialism, because a lot of people are kind of donating their time for shit that they'll never get back, but it's their choice to do so. That's why it's not really socialism. Socialism and communism, you're forced to do that shit. But if you do it out of goodwill because you want to help the kids, that's not socialism. It's social. Maybe it's socially inspired. Maybe it's for the social good, but that's your choice. I have the choice to deploy capital to make money, to make a profit. I have a choice to ask for help. I have a choice to go into value for this podcast and not lean on sponsors, because God only knows how they're going to fucking rip my listeners off. I have a choice. These people that are helping these kids at Lemonade Day in Lubbock, Texas, they have a choice to read the scribblings of a 6-year-old. Could you imagine? But these people have a lot of fun doing that. I mean, I guess it's still going on. But I've gone on too. I don't even know how the hell I got onto that. But in either event, these guys in Washington, D.C., it's whether or not Clarity Act passes. If we get the bill, it's a bad bill. If we don't get the bill, it's bad for the price of Bitcoin. That's this week. By Friday, the fat lady will sing one way or another, and I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.